What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guests are a duo who bring a wide variety of skills in business, operations, sales, and management, and who took the leap to become co-owners of an urban cabin campground. They opened their hotel 3 years ago and have received raving reviews since then, capturing the essence of hospitality in an outdoor setting. They are also the co-owners of a hospitality management company called All Forward Outdoors, LLC. They are the co-owners of the Wrong Way River Lodge and Cabins, Joe Balcken and Shelton Steele. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Dan.
Happy to be here, Dan.
It's so good to have you here. So I just want all of our listeners to know they're in Asheville. I think I was there in August or September. I don't remember exactly. And for the Independent Lodging Congress, shout out to ILC. And we got a tour of their incredible campground slash hotel, urban campground slash hotel. That's each cabin is an A-frame that's built on these huge pylons that are raised up above a floodplain. I'm probably using all the terms the wrong way, but it's like FEMA plus whatever, totally awesome. And it just has this really incredible vibe in a river valley in Asheville. And we walked there and I was just blown away by it. Joe's daughter actually did the murals that are in the A-frame, which are super cool. They have a really cool kind of outdoor area, a great office. It's just a beautiful, beautiful location. When I went running the morning before I went there, I was running by the river and a bear came out of nowhere and that was fun. But it's this beautiful, idyllic setting that's incredible. And the reason why I'm sharing all this idea of the beautiful, idyllic stuff is because there was a hurricane since then, and it's really upended everything in Asheville and the Wrong Way. And I just wanted to get these two on to just share their experience and entrepreneurial journey and passion of everything that they're doing. And so we're going to bring it over to Joe and to Shelton. So given all of that and this incredible space that you've made, Shelton, we'll start with you. How do you define hospitality?
Yeah, that's a fun question. I come at it from a sense of place. And, the kind of keyhole in our project was we saw a need to create a lodging business that aligned with Asheville's outdoor personality. And so in doing so, if you zoom out and then zoom back in, we're in Western North Carolina, and then we're in Asheville, and we're in West Asheville specifically. The neighborhood that we adjoined is called the East West Asheville neighborhood, Ewana. And then our property actually sits down in the floodplain. So we align with the French Broad River, and we just felt like this is the place that it's my backyard, and I wanted to share it with everyone and create, an experience that aligned with my version of Asheville.
So a sense of place, given all of that. I love it. Okay. And then Joe, how about you? You came from a different world and created this incredible project. How do you define hospitality?
Yeah, as you mentioned, that different world, I come from a customer service background, and Shelton's definition of hospitality is a very emotional one. It allows our guests or potential guests to make an emotional connection, which is super important. But it allows me to take a very practical approach to hospitality. And for me, hospitality is all about managing guest expectations. If I do my job and accurately describe the experience for a potential guest, and they are able to opt into that experience, then I'm in a much better position to over-deliver based on what hospitality means to them. Everybody is different, and if someone's view of hospitality is a five-star hotel with luxurious amenities, unfortunately, I'm going to fail all day long. But if their definition of hospitality is something unique and different and outdoor centered, but convenient to all the amenities of Asheville, and they know what they're getting, we're going to be able to over deliver and get great reviews on Google, which we do. And that's a very practical approach to it from my perspective.
The world of outdoor experience hospitality or outdoor leisure, I don't know what they call it these days. It's really amazing to me because not only do you have the cabins, the beds, the tents, the hotels, whatever the place of sleeping is, or and the F&B, there's so much about experience and connecting to the outdoors, and it must make for an infinitely complex uh, way to hit people's expectations because they may have all of these ideas of outdoor experience from they want to zip line or canoe or river raft or I don't know, go shoot bows and arrows or I don't know, you name it. You can make all of that happen, but all of that must be a Rolodex of really great people that you have to basically almost pre-negotiate with, let them know you may have some people coming. It might not be all the time, but we want to like really delight these people. Um, I want to get into that in a little bit because I think it's just like super complicated, but also such an opportunity to delight so many people. Um, I think the real elephant in the room is so we walked um, from our hotel all the way down the river, across the freeway to your hotel.
Mhm.
And that was before the hurricane. Walk us through like where you are right now. I see the Asheville Forever flag behind you, Joe, but it was just complete devastation. And we're also coming on the heels of all the fires going on in Los Angeles. Yeah, how do you want to summarize like convey like your experience from when I was there to where you are now?
It was a lifetime ago. It was last summer that you were here, and I helped coordinate kind of the ILC route, and I sent you guys up through the River Arch District. And just to give you a sense of, you know, you personally, Dan, you were at the Plebe Winery. My friend Chris Denisha is the winemaker there,
Mhm.
and that building completely washed away. And
Wow.
it is a concrete pad. And Chris and his team went back out, a week or so after the storm, and they didn't go out to salvage anything. They literally were looking for mementos to help them remember that the place that no longer exists.
Heartbreaking.
Hmm.
And I just want to talk about the Plebe Winery also because I think it dovetails into what you guys have built and also all the other places that I went to in Asheville. If you haven't been to Asheville, go. It's awesome. It's so incredible. Topographically, food wise, outdoor experience wise. But at this winery, they they farmed most of their grapes. I forget what town, but maybe near Boone.
Boone, that's correct. Yeah.
Look at that. My
Hmm.
brain still works. But they said, look, you may taste this wine and it may not taste like a wine that you've had before, but they basically said, we don't give a fuck because we're unapologetically Asheville. We're unapologetically North Carolina. And this is our experience of what wine is from this location. What does it being unapologetically Asheville mean to you now in light of everything that has happened?
Joe, you could tell them about how he came up with the name Wrong Way, and then elaborate from there.
I think it ties very well into Shelton's comment about a sense of place. Um, you know, Chris and his wines are unapologetically Asheville because it's different, it's independent, it's unique. That's very much a fingerprint of Asheville. Small businesses, independent businesses, experiential businesses do very well here in Asheville because you can't get those experiences anywhere else but Asheville. So I think it's a reflection of somewhat of a counterculture vibe here in Asheville that everybody very much digs. And, how that relates to our business, when we were trying to come up with a name, we had, we started with dozens of names. We narrowed it down to 3 names. And when we were testing those in the market, we had one name that was very, I don't know, it felt like a neighborhood development, Rough Ridge or something very standard. And that tested very, very well. Everybody liked it. But it was just because it was on the surface okay, but it didn't create any emotion. But there was just as many people that said wrong way, hell yeah. They were very emotional about that name. And even though it didn't have as many people that said yes, all the people that did say yes about wrong way were like, that's it. You've got to go with it. Wrong way is a nod to the French Broad River right across the street from us that flows from south to north. It's one of the few rivers that flow from south to north. So we call it a wrong way river. But, there's plenty of people that would scratch their head about wrong way being our chosen name. But once they discover what it means and get into the layers of that onion, that's when we get you. And I challenge anyone to forget that name after you hear it.
It really resonated with me because I'm a font of useless information, and when I heard that it's one of the few northward flowing rivers, I was like, "Oh, I knew that the longest northward flowing river in the United States is the St. John River in Nashville."
Okay.
And I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." And then I thought about it. There aren't very many rivers that flow northward, and I think I love the story of your name because from a counterculture perspective, for those of people who have not been to Asheville, I mean, there's so much incredible just graffiti and food and just experimentation with so many businesses and artists. And I find it to be this little enclave of experimentation.
Hmm.
How has it been, um, as far as in the aftermath, and what kind of green shoots are you seeing from that kind of wrong way, countercultural, perspective?
I mean, it's still so raw. If you rewind to the actual storm, so we had a flood, and that was, it was the hurricane stacked on top of a bigger storm, a smaller storm before the hurricane, and then the waters came up, um, and devastated everything in our area. There were strong winds, and then as the waters receded, we kind of were able to get out and evaluate the level of devastation, in and around our area. Um, and the rebuilding is just going to take time. And one of my kind of mantras I've distilled from this disaster is, everything's changed, nothing's going to be the same, and that's okay, right? I think, if you look at some shared history that Joe and I have, we both worked on rivers at different points in our lives. Um, Not as friends at that point. We actually met through adult soccer, and played together for 20 years off and on. And, as we were kind of sussing out what wrong way is, what's our connection to this place? What's our connection to the French Broad River? Joe worked as a guide on the French Broad River. I worked as a kayak instructor on the French Broad River. And, I think one of the things that you learn in working on rivers is to have reverence for the river and nature, because you cannot control nature, and it's always more powerful than you are. So, you're always just kind of dancing with it and trying not to step on the river's feet, or should I say, let it step on yours, So to see something of that magnitude happen kind of in our front yard was unimaginable. But at the same time, rivers do that. They flood. This is the highest recorded flood in history. So for context, in 1916, there was a flood that was 23.1 feet. They started keeping records on the river in 1895. And then 2024, so this past year, we were at 24.6 feet. And they declare a flood at nine feet.
Wow. Yeah, it's like the 1,000-year flood, and those numbers are happening more and more. Those 1,000-year events are happening more and more frequently. But I think it's a little misleading because when they say 1,000-year, it's really just the probability of that happening. It's like 0.001 being a thousandth, right? So, and
Hmm.
then they say it's 1,000-year. But as you guys are talking, and we spoke before the holidays, I never got the sense of despair from you. I'm sure that's happened in private, okay? But when I was in 8th grade, I had a classmate who passed away, and it brought us all together in a way. But I remember something, we were talking about science fiction stuff before. There was this movie Starman in the 80s. I don't know if any of you saw it. Um, but the our principal or dean, he said to us, and we had an assembly, we all came together, and he said, um, I want to bring this quote from Starman that really struck me, but it said, it was an alien looking at people and said, what's most remarkable about you people, or you humans, or the human race, is that you tend to be at your best when you're at your worst.
Hmm.
And given everything that you've gone through, and like thinking about hospitality and delivering for others, and what are some of those, going with that green shoot motif, like what is some of the best that's come out? I know like Amy Kelly, who owns the Radical, she used her hotel to house first responders, and she's been raising money to help other people and entrepreneurs, and she's a former guest, and also she was at the ILC thing. But what are some of the best human qualities that you've seen come out over the past 6 months?
You mind if I answer this one, Joe?
Go for it.
I mean, the storm stripped everything away, so we had no running water, no electricity, and for the most part, cell phones didn't work. There was a couple of spots in town where you could get a cell signal. So in essence, it stripped everyone back to just kind of the basic humanity. And people published a newsletter in my neighborhood that they hand wrote and then posted on a central spot in the park, right? And that's how news was shared for a brief period. And what you had was people asking people, "What do you need? How can I help?" And at its core, a mountain town, there's fierce independence here, but we all banded together to take care of one another. And whether that meant you took your freezer full of food to the one guy who had power, on the other end of your neighborhood, and then you had big community dinners at his house because you could cook there. There were all these just really sweet moments where there was nothing to do but be present. You didn't need to take a picture of it. You weren't going to look at your social media account. It was just everybody getting together to share a meal or a whiskey drink and just talk about the day that they had had and share their hardships just in a way that allowed them to decompress and get ready to do it all over again the next day.
And so analog, right? It's at base, it's that idea of a meeting place, of a gathering point, of a hearth where you're sharing these stories. Things have come back, but are there any elements of that you're still seeing, that in that counterculture, wrong way mountain town, um, that will stick around? Or do people just get too busy and it just all goes away and back to normal?
I think that there's something that sticks around. I think before COVID, before this event, you really chose who you hung out with. You could drive to the brewery or drive to a club, or, you didn't always have to interact with your neighbors, especially if you didn't like them. But, you know, when we saw COVID, what everybody was forced to do was not gather in those typical places and not necessarily get to see their typical, groups. And everyone was kind of forced out onto the road to interact with their neighbors. And myself and many others formed some bonds with their neighbors because they were never forced to prior to that. And I think that had some lasting effects, and it was sort of replicated in this. I mean, I remember the day after, several days after, we spent a lot of time just getting on the chainsaw and getting people out of the neighborhood so they could go get groceries eventually, find a spot to call their loved ones in other towns. It was neighbors helping neighbors. And, when those connections are made and they're made in such kind of really dire circumstances, those bonds persist beyond an event like this. And, I've seen that kind of spider web outside of the neighborhoods when people come together for free food events like we did in the Iwana neighborhood here. It's just people are forced to make connections for different reasons um, beyond what they did previous. And I think that's when some of those bonds are made that persist beyond it.
Yeah, I would echo that and say, even in the business community, you did see fiercely, and we do have fiercely independent businesses, right? And in a lot of ways, if you're successful as a local independent business, you kind of have to focus on what's in front of you in order to keep growing your business. And what this has done is it's allowed everyone to kind of reset because, let's just call it what it was. We had an October that was a literal goose egg, and that is our busiest month of the year. It's what gets everyone through the winter. Joe calls it the grain silo month. It's what we store all our revenue up so that we can make it through right now. And, it was a goose egg. And so you're seeing businesses come together, form, different kinds of groups that are co-marketing, engaging with the city on redevelopment plans, really just sharing ideas and resources in order to figure out not just how to build back better, but how to build back together.
So much about the entrepreneurial journey is oftentimes we're standing at the edge, not knowing what's next. You're in that crucible. It's like, holy shit. Like, um, if you were to go back to when you first had, like, tell us about when you first had the idea to create this amazing place. Um, and then I'm sure you've stared over the edge a couple times, but then how did, give us a couple of times where you stood at the edge as an entrepreneur. I guess finish off with like the hurricane and the aftermath, but how has it made you better partners and better people?
Yeah. If you start with this idea, Joe and I came at it kind of independently, right? So in 2018, another close friend of mine and we had found a camping site in town. A developer friend owned some property that was a big field on a creek, and he said, "Hey, go camp there anytime." And so I call it my brown liquor brainstorming moment. But we were sitting around the campfire, and we had done it a half dozen times over the summer, and I said, "Damn, this is what people want to do when they come to Asheville, right?" I mean, Asheville, you see kayaks on top of cars. There's mountain bikes, $10,000 mountain bikes on the backs of cars. It is an outdoor town. And it just made sense that there was the missing piece of the lodging puzzle was an outdoor focused hotel. And so you fast forward to winter of 2019, and Joe and I are back on an adult soccer team together. And in the kick around, literally been there 10 minutes, and we're knocking the ball around, and we immediately he's talking about he wants to get out of his corporate job. He has an idea about a lodging business. I tell him my idea about the lodging business, and we go out for beers afterwards, and boom, we're off to the races, right? And then we went under contract on this piece of land during COVID. So, and in a lot of ways, COVID was kind of our angel in the corner because it allowed us to extend, to do more research, to figure out the problems that we kept uncovering as we were figuring out how to make a lodging property work on a steep slope that's 2.2 acres, you know, in a floodplain. It had all these different challenges. Um, and I would say, as we unlocked the challenge of construction, in a lot of ways, for me, that was my crucible. That was my part of the partnership, and once we opened up, I really felt like we were off to the races, and Joe's got this funny way of kind of bringing me back to earth, and he'll tell me, the hard stuff is the good stuff. So, don't shy away from it, because, it's going to be hard and it's going to be rewarding, but you can't have the big rewards without the hardships. And so we, refinance.
He loves when I say that, when things are hard, but by the way.
Yeah. He gets, yeah. I usually respond with something sarcastic like, "Thanks, Dad."
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info. I agree with that too. I know, just personally, going on vacation with the family, you have your breaks, you go on vacations as the kids grow up. I always find the most memorable ones looking back are the ones where everything went sideways. Like you missed the plane, you slept in the airport. Um, who knows, where the ones where everything goes wrong, it kind of stinks when you're going through it, until it happens so many times that you're like, no, there is going to be good here. I know it. So, but it takes a lot of times. So Joe really has the muscle developed of the calamities, so he knows that it will always get better and be more rewarding.
Well, that's the contrast between our two personalities, right? I am the eternal optimist, right? And so when we were raising money and the millions got bigger, Joe was like, "Holy shit, man!" I'm like, "No, we got this. We got it. We got it." And he tempers my optimism with a lot of reality, and I'm grateful for that. But there was a moment a couple of months ago where I walked in one morning and just looked at him and said, "Is it hard enough yet?" Because it's pretty hard right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's, those crucible moments. COVID was one of them. Just, clarifying the timing of that. We went under contract before COVID, but it was a 90-day due diligence, and the 90 days put us into March of 2020. So we basically went into COVID with, hey, we're going to start this new business. And then by March of 2020, we were almost signing on the dotted line, literally. And then, we said, wait a minute, is the world going to be the same? Are people going to still vacation or, come to Asheville? So that 90 days turned into a year due diligence. And during that time, we had enough kind of cover to plan and design wrong way, because it was not easy. And then when we opened, like you said, we thought it was going to be off to the racers, but we had a couple more crucible moments after that, the flood being the biggest, really, of all that. And we're still in it. And, we moved very quickly after the flood to remediate, get everything out. We knew that there was going to be moisture and mold mitigation that we had to do. So it was very heads down, blinders on. We knew, step by step, day by day, that action could be taken towards a goal, which is to get reopened. As of the end of last year, we are fully operational. All of our cabins are open, repaired. And now we're at this moment where we have to pick our head up and we go, holy shit, what's happening with Asheville? What's happening with tourism in Asheville? Are people going to come back? And all of that is, pretty much out of our control. Whereas when we were rebuilding, it was very much within our control. So it gets a little scary when you go from, day by day, knowing what you need to get done, to now we're picking our heads up and going, how are we going to get people to come vacation in Apple?
Not to use like another flood metaphor, but you got to almost wait for the tide to come in, which is all those things that are out of your control. I want to also, I know I painted a little bit of picture and I'll put it on the YouTube part of this and we'll also have links to it. But it's really remarkable. I know that, building, I don't think I've ever heard of anyone intentionally building in a floodplain before. So, but I don't know a lot of people. But the way that you built them with these concrete platforms, what are they, 10 or 15 feet above ground level?
They range from 10 to 16 feet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, and then the cabins, which are these super awesome cabins, are situated on top of them. And it's up against this retaining wall or steep incline, which actually, if you, the whole valley turned into a river, which actually turned, so the water came up, but it was in an eddy, if you will, right? So you didn't really have a lot of damage. I mean, you had damage just from the rising water, but it wasn't from the torrent of chocolate milk coming down the valley. And in some ways, intentionally placing that there and situating everything that the way you did, even with the 1,000-year flood, it's remarkable how well everything stayed together.
Yeah, I feel a lot of gratitude. There's a moment when we were excavating the site to put the walls in that we would end up building underneath, and way up in the top of the property, they excavated a band of river rock, and I picked up one of the river rocks. It was the size of a new potato in my hand, and I just kind of laughed, because I said, "Whew, that was a big flood." That was a long time ago before they recorded river levels, and just that kind of knowledge that, okay, man, we are in the floodplain. And so our project is really creative problem solving more than anything. The cabins sit on 18-inch by 18-inch concrete piers. There are 4 piers per cabin, and then the actual cabin is tied to the piers on a steel I-beam system. And the way you build in the floodplain is at this moment in time, you're required to build 2 feet above base flood elevation. That's the law here. And so each cabin had its own flood elevation, flood certificate, if you will. And they're all situated at different heights related to this big plain that is, out on our side of the river and on the other side of the river. And in doing so, we unlocked a couple different problems. One, we created parking spaces underneath each of them, which parking is always a headache. It's a hard thing to dedicate land to, but if it's lodging, everyone wants their own personal parking spot. So similar to a beach house, you pull in right underneath these cabins. And then we oriented the front doors back into the hillside so that when we had to bench the hillside, create a big flat bench, and there's a wall on the lower side and a wall on the upper side. We actually made that into the walkway, and so all the cabins exit out onto a common walkway that we call the cabin trail. And then there are multiple stairways that get you down to your parking spaces, and that cabin trail dead ends back into our river lodge with the kind of exit through the gift shop idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. Given what you know now, do you think that you would ever build in a floodplain again, or is there a competitive advantage to making use of kind of more risky land?
I mean, I will say that I look at floodplain development somewhat differently. Um, but I'm not going to be prescriptive for anyone, but the laws and zoning requirements are in place for good reason. We're a reflection of that. We did build to those standards, and we were um, dealing with soaked furniture and drywall, and instead of entirely destroyed structures. So that was really good. We built for the flood. We had a historic flood, and we are now fully operational. So I think the requirements that are there for a good reason. It's resiliency. But, as with everything, there's a balance. And, there are other businesses and other property owners that are dealing with the aftermath of this flood in a much different way with much different impacts and much different decisions. And those things are very personal to them. So I'm not going to tell anybody how they should or shouldn't, go about those problems and those decisions.
I love how you were sharing how it was great when you can control the things you can control, rebuilding, getting it open. So now your Death Star is fully operational, just to bring it back to another science fiction reference. When you think about, or if you could share that idea of the things that are out of your control coming back to Nashville. So whether it's tourism, conferences, just overall tourism back to Asheville, is what are some of the things that you're hearing? Or for instance, like Independent Lodging Congress did an event there last summer. But if you had a magic wand, what spell would you cast to have that tide start rising? What are some things that people are listening that they might consider if they haven't, to help Asheville get back to operational?
Yeah, I mean, if I had a wand, I would, you know, try and make everyone that is considering Asheville vacation in the near term feel comfortable that they can have fun in Asheville while still respecting the disaster. I think a lot of people are a little bit cautious about vacationing in Asheville, considering that there's still a lot of businesses and individuals and residents, that are still picking up the pieces. And so they almost feel bad about that. And I would say part of our recovery is tourism. And we very much, I mean, if I were a local giving anyone permission, which I know I'm not in a place to give anyone permission, but I would say locals benefit, our economy benefits from tourism and people having fun in Asheville. And, you know, a big impact of this flood was on our economy and those businesses that rely on tourism. So if we are going to get ourselves out of this, part of the solution is going to be tourism. So, we very much want people to return to Asheville. It's still a great city. There are areas that, are going to take months and years to recover. But downtown Asheville was, is still awesome. There's plenty of places to go. It was untouched by and large. The mountains handled the water beautifully, and that's a big draw for people. So there's plenty to see and do here in Asheville, and we want people to come back.
Yeah, there's been a lot of references to Katrina, Dan, right? And kind of New Orleans recovery from that disaster. And they said it took a couple years for them to get back, but they actually, they outpaced tourism prior to that hurricane. And I think people listening, whether you're taking a sales retreat somewhere, that's a big part of our business here at Wrong Way is group business. So sales retreats, nonprofit, any kind of team building. We're great in the sense that everybody gets their own cabin, and then there's a workspace that you can meet and get your business done. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they're sitting around a campfire sharing stories and kind of connecting one to one. And I feel like that's kind of the magic that happens at Wrong Way. But as people do come back, I think that the invitation is, like Joe said, is to have fun and to come do the things that you've always done here. We want to evoke that emotion from people. We want you to come celebrate the birthday parties. Like I said, bring the families here and just enjoy this place that is our home. And in doing so, that helps everybody stand back up. So it's not send money to the GoFundMe accounts anymore. That was wonderful, and it had a place, and we're grateful. But now it's truly just an invitation to come, be a guest in our town.
Thank you for sharing that, because actually I'm in a forum, an entrepreneurs organization, and every year we go on a retreat. One of my forum mates, they live in Western North Carolina, and we have a retreat coming up in May. So I have our monthly meeting tomorrow morning. I'm just gonna bring it up and say, hey, we haven't figured it out. Let's check out Asheville. So I can't promise anything, but I think that's a really great way to make a small, I don't know, a small contribution to get that tide coming back.
Absolutely.
I'm also going to talk to Meg, who's now got she got promoted. I forget what her I called her the grand poobah of the Independent Lodging Congress, but maybe we can have a reboot there and just kind of pull it up from our shoestrings again. So I don't want to put words in her mouth. And she's probably already got everything scheduled out because she's so on top of it. But I'll raise that. And I guess any other listeners, if you're thinking about anything, give it a try. I mean, Asheville is one of my favorite places in the United States. Food, beer, outdoor activities. It's really a fantastic place. I really enjoy it.
So do I.
Yeah, whatever we can do. I have to check in with Amy as well because I know like their couple ground floors got flooded out, but I'm hopeful that they're up and running again.
Yeah, they just reopened, last week, I believe.
Oh, great. So the Radical is open. Um, yeah, it's such a fantastic place. Um, so I know that we spent a lot of time looking backwards, but if Shelton, we'll start with you. And maybe it's hard to think about this, but what's exciting you most about what you're seeing in the future?
Um, I think there's a real opportunity for Asheville and Western North Carolina to kind of redefine itself post flood. Um, it was a change agent, and I'm excited to see what changes materialize. Um, I'm also looking forward to guests coming back and kind of participating in our economy, our economic recovery. The brightest moments for me as the co-owner of this property is really watching our guests interact with the property and showing us a new and fun way to use the property, whether it's a celebration or a New Year's Eve party like we just had a few weeks ago.
And Joe, how about you?
Yeah, I think that for sure, and in particular in spaces like the River Arts District, that was such a cool spot and an upcoming spot. It was being revitalized and reimagined. It used to be heavily industrial, um, and it was really on this trajectory to become something really, really cool. And I think in some ways, the flood has kind of, washed away the barriers that may have allowed it to evolve into that thing that it can be. It's not a slam dunk. The vision is not clear. There's a lot of conversations about whether we should or should not even develop in floodplains, which is a totally appropriate conversation to have. Um, but I think those types of conversations will balance again the resiliency with making a place like the River Arts District into a really, really cool spot to be. It's so central to Asheville. It's got such a cool vibe. Um, you know, the arts culture is such a big part of Asheville. And the River Arts District in particular was a hub. We really want that to come back with arts as its center again.
Thinking about the future and what's exciting about the future as it pertains to Asheville at large, but in particular, your property at the wrong way. Um, take that business group, that forum I was talking about, or even uh, a family or a family reunion, if you will, coming together. What can they expect? What is paint? Walk us through what like a 3 or 4 day weekend could look like for me, for them, um, coming in there and checking out, like based on like what some of the best reviews you've ever gotten are.
Yeah, that's a fun one. We groups that check in here, everyone has their own cabin. So, right from the get-go, you're entering into your own little A-frame cabin and you've got this kind of sense of, independence from your work retreat where you've got your own private space. Every cabin has either a balcony or a porch that kind of connects you to the outdoors. And then, it's Asheville's dining scene is remarkable, so groups tend to do big dinners out in town, followed by coming back to Wrongway and nestling in around a campfire and kind of winding the evening down. We have two different workspaces on our property. One is an 8-person conference room that we call the board room. So great for smaller groups. And then we have a larger event space called the Eddy, like a still moving area of water on a river. That will seat up to 32. So it hosts kind of like our full property buyouts. If you buy out 16 cabins, that type of group would be in that space. So you do always recommend no more than a 3/4 work day, right? So you have the afternoon to get outside. The Greenway is just across the street from our property. So if you hop on the Greenway as a group, you'd walk to the River Arts District in less than a mile and, post up at the Wedge Brewery that you were at, which is, bohemian outdoor beer garden with craft beer and all the different walks of Asheville life there to see. Um, we do outdoor dinners in our meadow space that sits up above the cabins and looks out over the river in the Biltmore Estate. Those are remarkable and super memorable. Um, but it's really the time in between the meetings that I feel like our property allows for connection and, making a memory that, is fundamental to kind of being a great work team.
Mm. And then as far as if they wanted to engage in some other outdoor activities or things, maybe that's where Joe pops in. But as far as rafting or zip lining or hiking, or like, what are those other experiences that make your life awesome because you're able to deliver on those experiences, Joe?
Yeah, we're actually really lucky in that there are so many outdoor outfitters, experience providers, small businesses that were already established in Asheville prior to us even coming online. And one of our advantages in particular is we come from the outdoor industry. We participate in outdoor activities. We're also locals. So we knew we had a network. We knew who the best providers in each of those kind of respective experience domains were already. And we created essentially a network of those providers. You can go, for instance, you can go on our website and we have an experiences page that recommends, like a rafting, whitewater rafting company, a ziplining company, an e-mountain biking company, just about every experience you can think of that's in the outdoor space, we can connect you with that because, as I said, everybody's different. So you might have somebody that's really into the outdoors that wants to do something that's extreme, like whitewater rafting north of here in the Marshall area. But you might also have folks that we call outdoor curious that, you know, want something a little bit more tame, but is dipping their toe into those waters. It's part of our mission to connect people with the outdoor experience, whether they be one of those people that's outdoor active and they've been that way for many, many years, or someone that's curious about it and they would never opt into a traditional campground. And they very much appreciate the amenities that we have to offer as a non-traditional campground, and then connecting them with the outdoors in our way. Who knows where that could snowball to. So, we call ourselves the gateway to the outdoors.
Love it. And then on a final note, I know I brought this up at the beginning, Joe, but has your daughter repainted the murals? And if anyone's looking at these murals, were so awesome. So if there's any designers out there that want someone to go to work and paint some cool murals, his daughter did an incredible job painting those murals in each of the cabins. But has she repainted?
Yeah, she actually did them over winter break.
Give her a shout out.
Yeah, Phoebe Balcken.
Phoebe Balcken. There you go.
She's in interior design at Western Carolina University right now. She just headed back this past weekend, but and we shared some pictures of the new murals on our social pages what was it? Was it over the weekend, Shelton?
Yeah.
But basically, it's a similar perspective. The layered Blue Ridge Mountains, but we added a little difference. We added a river winding through the mountains, and we call those cabins that got impacted by the flood our river touched cabins. So
Love it.
there's a little bit difference in some of our cabins compared to the other ones.
Oh, fantastic. Phoebe, great work. I really appreciated it. So, who knows? Maybe this will get someone sending you an RFP to do
She's
some
ready to
painting
go.
somewhere.
She's got a sales sheet I helped her with. So
Oh, great. So does she have a website too?
no, she hasn't gotten that far. Maybe after college, but she has taken on some side jobs, and I'm sure she would be happy to get more.
Well, gentlemen, I've enjoyed all of this. I know it's been a long time and you've had so much happen since we were in person. Um, but I hope to get out there in the next 6 months. If anyone wanted to learn more about you or Wrong Way, what's the best way for them to do that, to get in touch or learn more?
Yeah, you can check us out on our website, and then we're on Instagram and Facebook as well. We have a LinkedIn page, but all the inquiry forms go to either Joe or me, so you'll get us.
Perfect. No, this has been fantastic. I thank you guys. I can't imagine all the ups and downs, just so extreme, all the crucibles. And I wish you continued to success. And if this helps in any way, shape, or form, it's my absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Been a fun conversation. We'll see you back in Asheville, okay?
Yes, Asheville forever. Hashtag Asheville forever.
There you go.
And to my listeners, if this changed your ideas about starting a hotel or inspired you to do so, or even at the very least, not build in a floodplain, um, please pass it along to someone else. And please reach out to Joe and Shelton, because I think that their experience and stories, I'm sure they'd be able to pay it forward as far as their experience.
Would love that.
They're just good people, and they have an incredible property. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all that other stuff. And thank you. We'll catch you next time.